Hello and welcome to Thursday Thoughts. Thursday Thoughts? What on earth are they, I hear you ask? Well, my friend Lucy and I meet every week over on Instagram to talk all things personal growth because she is as obsessed with it as I am. And we decided that we might as well put those conversations out as a weekly podcast. So now you can listen to us chat here on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And we'll be talking about topics such as spirituality, limiting beliefs, the ego, imposter syndrome, gratitude, meditation, confidence, and so much more. So if you're ready, here we go.
The topic that we're talking about today is alignment. And I had this sort of panic thinking, shit, I don't know how much I've got to say about this, but we'll see how that'll probably mean we'll be on here for an hour and a half.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. Do you want to start?
Yeah,
or
okay, let's go for it. So alignment. I suppose let's start with what does it mean? What does it mean in terms of, I suppose, this sort of whole world of spirituality? And I think alignment, as I understand it, is when you are being true to yourself, to your inner being, to that soul part of you. And you can tell when you're in alignment when everything is feeling really good, you have loads of energy, things just are flowing. It's flowing for you. It's when you're in that flow state, and you feel really bloody good. And I think when you're not in alignment, you can tell because you have a much denser energy. You're just feeling off. You're feeling not great. I mean, the example of this for me is like, with work. So I got to a point when my previous career, when I was working, I had a tuition business, I was running that, but there were many parts of that which I was very sort of, I just had to do a lot of paperwork and a lot of stuff, which honestly, even the thought of it before I would do it made me feel so heavy and dense and just, and that for me was just a real sign. Well, I didn't realize it at the time, but it just wasn't what I was meant to be doing. It wasn't aligned with that. And the moment I decided to let that job go, to let that career go and move on, oh my goodness, the energy shift was amazing. And I think, the only way we can tell if we're in alignment or not is just to listen to what is going on and being aware. And it's really about just following our joy and following those things which make us feel good, because that really is the way to tell. Are you doing what your inner soul, your inner being is meant to be doing, meant to be here?
No, completely. I totally agree with all of that. And I think, you're right. I think ultimately, some people might be like, well, what exactly does it mean? But the way to know, as you said, whether or not you're in alignment it is really very simple. It's whether or not you're feeling good in the things that you're doing and in the things that you're doing. And I think it's also asking yourself the question of, are you doing what you want to be doing with your life? And that can be in any area. That's not just in work. That can be in friendships or love or whatever area it is. But ultimately, it's kind of, you can almost sort of take an inventory of every area of your life and think, well, let's take friendships. When I think about my relationship with that friend or that friend or that friend, how does it make me feel? Because when you're in alignment with a friend, because when you come away with them, you either feel uplifted or you feel kind of drained. You either feel better or you feel worse. So it really is just following, like you said, it's following what feels good. And I think it's very easy to kind of not listen to ourselves in terms of our alignment. And I think career is a really good example of this. Like you just said, when you were doing your teaching, you could feel that it just wasn't aligned, and I so had that before as well in so many jobs, well, basically every freaking job I've had, until what I'm doing now with the podcast and stuff. And it's when you're doing a job but that you just know in your heart is not what you want to be doing. Like if you're doing a job, if you have a career that on Sunday nights you're kind of sitting at home dreading it, then you know that you are not in alignment with what you're supposed to be doing. So it's really that simple, isn't it? But also, one thing that's occurred to me is that I think being in alignment isn't something that any of us should expect to be completely in all the time, because we're humans, so we're souls having a human experience, and because of that, there are lots of things that come up every day that are going to sort of pull us out of alignment. So it's not as if there are people there might be people walking around the world who are completely in alignment 24/7, and great, but I think for the majority of people it's not something that we should expect to feel all the time. But
yeah, totally.
We kind of have to get intentional, don't we, about
exactly,
what we're doing.
because if you think about it, there are so many different ways that you're being pulled out constantly. I mean, just the way we're brought up for a start, and all the belief, because if we think about all the beliefs which we are brought up with from our caregivers, from the people around us, we automatically pick up on those, which is unsurprising because we trust and we follow those people, and all of those, depending on what your parents or whoever believed in, actually can very easily pull you very much out of alignment, out of what your true essence is. And that's no fault of your own, it's just the way that you've been brought up. So it's very, very easy to kind of be constantly pulled out. So it's actually quite hard work, I think, sometimes to really it is constantly stay. So you'll probably find, unless you're in that, as you say, in that state of complete pure joy and bliss all of the time, you're constantly being pulled out. So it's about finding practices, as always, which can help you center yourself, channel yourself back into that place. And a lot of that practice is about really noticing what are some of those beliefs which you're carrying around with yourself. Belief is just a thought that you have over and over and over again. And so that is a very important practice, becoming aware of what you've picked up, what is yours or not yours.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of almost deciphering those thoughts and those beliefs, which, as we always say, the media can throw onto you, and you're getting it from every direction.
Totally. That is so true, because ultimately I think one of the ways that I translate alignment is, and I think you said this at the very beginning, it's, are you being true to yourself? Are you actually doing the things in your life that sort of the higher part of you wants to be doing? And it is so easy to not be doing that because of all the pressure that we have from society, the people around us, just the world and the culture that we live in. But ultimately, if we're all completely honest with ourselves, we know again, going back to the sort of career thing, we know if we're not feeling in love with the job that we're doing. We just know. But I think it's so easy in the world in which we live to really suppress all of those things and to assume that we can't possibly be living the life we want. We can't possibly be doing the things we want to be doing. So we don't sort of tap into the truth of what we really, really want, because it feels unrealistic, or it feels overwhelming, or it feels like too much hard work. So we almost choose to ignore it. And I've definitely done that. I mean, we've talked about this I've talked about this in the podcast many times. I think we've also talked about it on this live, is that, for many, many, many years, for most years of my life, I was living a life that wasn't enough for me. And that isn't to say that there weren't moments of joy and happiness and great times and all the rest of it. Of course there were. But fundamentally, in my heart of hearts, I knew for a hell of a long time that I wasn't fulfilling my potential. I wasn't doing the things that I wanted to be doing, or that I had the ability to do. I was just suppressing who I really was and what I really wanted to be doing, because it just felt unrealistic. It felt not real. Like, I'll give you an example. When I was at Radio 2, when I was up in the studios, I was thinking, I don't want to be doing this bit of it. I don't want to be on that side of the glass. I want to be on the other side of the glass speaking to the freaking microphone.
Yeah.
But at the time, I was like, well, that's clearly never going to happen, because who the hell are you to think that you could present a radio show. Do you know what I mean? It's that kind of thing. And for years, that was what my intuition was telling me, was this isn't what I want to be doing. That's what I want to be doing. But I ignored it. So I think so many of us do ignore those signs from our intuition, or those sort of somatic feelings and like you say, it's that heaviness. If you're sitting on the couch on a Sunday night wondering how you can extend Sunday evening so you don't have to go into Monday morning, well, you're not in alignment. So
it's so true. I mean, it's those niggles, isn't it? We all have them. It's those niggles, and it's learning to actually listen to those niggles. We're so good at just suppressing, as you say, suppressing them, squashing them, not listening to them. And that, again, is because of all the pressures we have on modern life. It's like, oh my God, if we're talking about career here, it's like, well, I've got to earn a living. This is a good job. Why on earth would I leave this amazing job and I'm making a good living? Why would I do that? But again, that's all the noise, the external noise, which you were listening to, rather than really tuning in to that intuition and tuning into those niggles, because they never go away, those niggles. They will just get louder and louder and louder until you can't ignore them anymore. And
so
that's when, people might have this midlife crisis or do whatever, because actually suddenly it's like, well, I've got to do something. I've got to listen and actually follow my heart. And maybe we should talk about some of the things we can do to help us, find that alignment. Which, one thing which is really useful. Okay, obviously, following your joy is massively important. So, just doing more of things which make you feel good, which light you up, because that is your true essence directing you to what you really want to be doing. And so just doing more of what makes you feel good is a brilliant way to do it. And you and I have both done that and it really helps you follow that path. It's like following the breadcrumb trail. Just doing one thing at a time. And another way, which is really good, is if we kind of tune into our energy, get quite hippy dippy here, but tune into our energy centers, into our chakras, right from the crown of your head all the way down to sort of your root. If you go all the way down your spine, you can do practices such as breathing and meditation, and really focusing on each of those 7 energy centers from your crown down into your third eye, your throat, your heart. You're going all the way down to your root, and that can really just help you feel really lovely and centered, really aligned. And that once you do that, then you can really start to tune and tap into that intuition. If you get quiet enough and you just try and ignore the noise around you, then you're kind of letting that inner voice become louder. So it's really important, I think, quietening your mind, quietening down, and allowing you to come forward, because it does. You get these little whispers and these little kind of it's almost like a thought, right? Oh, I'm going to do that, or I'm going to do that.
A very quick break to ask you to hit the follow or subscribe button if you haven't already. And if you're enjoying this episode, I'd be super grateful if you could hit those stars and rate it too. Thank you.
Yeah, so it's and I mean, yeah, completely. I'm so with you on all of that. And I think another way of saying the same thing is, it's almost like we want, this sounds really kind of woo, but hey, this is what these conversations are about. But we want, really, what we want to be aiming for is to get out of the 3D. We want to get out of, our 5 senses and tap into, the 5D, the things that we can't see and we can't hear or touch or taste or smell, because I think one of the main things about all of this kind of stuff is you have to sort of develop a belief and a trust in the unknown, because most of the kind of fantastic things are not known. They're not things that we can, they're not necessarily a clear path set out in front of us that we can see. So we have to have that faith and that belief that there is more to life than what we can see with our taste, touch, smell, hear with our five senses. So I think if you can, you know, do things to really tap into that and to kind of cultivate that faith in the unknown, because it's on the other side of that that's going to get you to where you are. If you're living just in the 3D and everything that is known to you and everything that you've done before and everything that is kind of, you know, safe and what's the word I'm looking for? You know, there's that kind of sense of, like, for example, when you're doing a job that is pay you a monthly salary, and you know that you go into work Monday to Friday and you go and sit in your office, and it's known, it's familiar and it's safe. But actually what we want to be doing, and this is where this stuff gets hard, I think, because what is hard about embracing all things personal growth and embracing all things sort of spirituality is the fact that we are asking ourselves to have faith in something that we can't see, and something that is bigger than us, and something, you know, a higher power. And that, I think, is where people really find this so difficult. But like you say, things like breath work, things like meditation, just getting still, and also, you know, I'm sure we've talked about this before, but you cannot expect to do one meditation for 5 minutes and kind of get all the answers. It doesn't work like that. We have to do these things consistently over time for us to, you know, get clearer in our minds. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's so true. That is really hard, because for me, it was that feeling of faith and belief that has grown gradually over time. I used to always call myself a complete non-believer in anything. I honestly was like that person, and it's only in more recent years that I've found this belief in something bigger, and I'm just trying to think what helped me form that, because that, if you don't have that, then it's all of this stuff is actually very, very difficult. I mean, I think listening to Abraham Hicks is a really great place to start for somebody if they really don't, they're like, oh God, this is all just total bollocks. But listening to Abraham Hicks, I think every time I listen to her, that kind of makes me go, there is definitely something bigger, and there is, it's, you know, and listening to Joe Dispenza, it was another one who makes me think, right, yeah, there's definitely something bigger. So yeah, it's, some people just have that belief and others don't, but it's, and you can't fall, you know, that someone's got to discover that for themselves. It's not something you can say, you've just got to have. But I do think it makes all of this personal development stuff so much easier if you've got it. And I agree, you know, it is a process. You never ever going to arrive. Ta-da! I've got it all. No, it's a constant process, and it's quite frustrating sometimes, because when we're talking about alignment, you know, here we are, we're talking about alignment. So often I feel like I'm completely not in alignment, but it's having that awareness that, oh, right, I'm really not in it. And it's having that awareness to kind of make sure that you then pull yourself back in when you can, and practice those things that make you feel good. And often with me, it's when I've been, you know, I'm really busy, I'm stuck at my computer for too long, and suddenly I feel that sort of denseness, you know, that heavy energy. It's like, what am I doing? And actually for me, just going outside, having a walk, getting up, putting some really good music on, having a dance about, shaking all that sort of energy away, and just reminding myself constantly, right, what am I doing? Is this bringing me joy? Is this what I want to do? Or, you know, as you say, with relationships, so it's not getting caught up in all that sort of, you know, if someone's bitching about somebody else, or there's gossip, or it's just trying to steer clear of all of that, because that again is not going to lead you into the right path. You know that you shouldn't be, you know, you don't want to be talking about someone in a negative way. But it's very easy to get drawn into these things, you know, because it's that you want to belong to the group and you want to do all of that. But actually, it's just this awareness, right? Is that really what I want to be doing? So,
you just said a word that I've got to pick up on, which is belonging. And I think the reason why all of this kind of stuff that you and I talk about can be so incredibly hard, aside from, you know, that faith that you need in the unknown and that higher power, is that need to belong. Because most people are not having these kinds of conversations, and most people are not necessarily on this path, and they sort of can be very cynical or look at you like you're completely fucking bonkers, da 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 da. And ultimately, the reason I think we resist some of these things is because as we go down that path, we are, we're turning away from the other path, which is the known, and, the people that we love, and the people that have known us for years, and ultimately our kind of base human, or one of our, basic human needs is to belong. So there's an aspect of this where you have to kind of realize that you can't necessarily belong to, hang on, let me start that again. I think ultimately the most important thing is that we belong to ourselves, because if we are living a life where we're trying to fit in with other people because we want to belong to that group or that job or whatever it is, then ultimately we don't even belong to ourselves. So that was just something that I wanted to pick up on. And also going back to what you were saying about Abraham Hicks, answering the question of, well, how do I go about getting into alignment, and how do I go about cultivating that faith? Well, like you say, it's listening to, it's finding people who are on that same path. It's finding people who have such a strong belief in all of this kind of stuff that they help fuel your belief. I mean, you and I know this to be true. We have immersed ourselves in books and podcasts and audiobooks and courses, and people like you and I literally becoming friends because we're very much into the same things, and it's that reinforces your faith in those unknown things that we're all a bit scared of. But for sure, because ultimately our brain is going to find evidence of the things that we believe. So what we need to do is start looking for evidence of what we want to believe, because we see life we all see life completely differently through our own lens. And you can have two people in exactly the same set of circumstances, and those two people will react completely differently. They will be affected completely differently. And that just goes to prove that it is how you look at things. And so if you want to improve your life, and if you want to lean into the kind of more woo-woo things and potentially really change things up and change your life, then you've got to start looking for the evidence of that being true, which means looking for people who are also talking, having these kinds of conversations. Because when you're surrounding yourself, and when I say surrounding myself, I don't mean literally surrounding yourself in the same room, but surrounding yourself in terms of what you're listening to, what you're watching, and all of that. When you start surrounding yourself with those kinds of people and those kinds of conversations, it's going to really help you to get into alignment, because suddenly you're going to be like, oh my gosh, yes. If you're only having conversations with people who are completely cynical about anything, that isn't like right here, tangible, blah blah blah. If that is the world that you're living in, if you're only having conversations with people who are moaning about life and saying how shit the world is,
you get dragged in.
Blah blah blah. If those are the people that you are spending your time with, then that is what is going into your head. You've got to change what you're consuming. You've got to change what you're allowing into your mind. I feel like I'm going on a bit of a rant. No, I'm so sorry.
But it's so good, but it's so true, because I think it's so easy to get dragged into that negative cycle when you are constantly hearing, and it might be a friendship group, but everyone is talking negatively about the same thing, and you're right, they're being cynical there. And it rubs off on you, it really does. And so it can be very difficult to then get yourself out of that sort of way of thinking. And you have to make a real concerted effort to do so. But it is absolutely possible. And so it's about having an awareness of like, oh my God, are those people behaving in a way that I actually want to behave? But I think when you're in that negative energy and that negative spiral, it's hard to recognize sometimes. So it is so crucial, as you say, to find the people who really make you feel good, who make you feel energized. It's an energy thing, isn't it? It's like people who really light your fire and light your soul and see the world with a real positive spin and a real, it's completely possible to fuel yourself with positive energy and good vibes, and just by as you say, what you listen to. I mean, as we mentioned this before, I tend not to, I go really deaf to the news. I don't really want to hear about most of it. I have a general sense of what's going on, but you can get, so, like at the moment here in the UK, you know, cost of living crisis, all of the stuff that's going on. If you just constantly fuel yourself with that, then you're going to feel pretty shit. You're going to worry constantly. It's going to be on your mind all the time. And actually, is that what is that doing you any good? You know, I know that's going on, but the more and more we all talk about it, the more and more it's going to just keep happening.
Yeah.
Whereas if we actually just don't listen to it as much and just focus on us feeling as good as we possibly can, then, you know, is it going to affect the cost of living crisis? Not really, but at least we'll be feeling better about everything.
It's so true. One thing I wanted to say before I forget is that I have become so much less tolerant of people's bullshit. My kind of bullshit-ometer has just gone through the fucking roof. Do you know what I mean? Like I find, and I've really noticed this in the last few years, is that I cannot tolerate to the same extent people who are just, you know, having these kinds of conversations that I don't want to be a part of. I just find that I need to remove myself. That isn't to say that I don't obviously sometimes get into those kinds of conversations. It's very difficult not to be drawn into stuff. Like, we are human, obviously, but
and of course it doesn't mean also that you don't care and you're not compassionate.
No.
No. So it doesn't mean that. It just means you're just managing your own energy and your own
completely
perception of it all.
Yeah. And actually, I'll give an example that happened. So a very good friend of mine, we were having a conversation the other day, and she brought up the subject of money and, you know, how her mortgage has gone like up loads, and my mortgage has I've just recently remortgaged for another 5 years, and my mortgage has gone up like 200 quid a month. Now, if I wanted, I could be like, oh my God, you know, like, what is the point of me just thinking about that and worrying about that over and over and over and over in my mind? It's not going to do anything. It's not going to make any difference. There's just no point in focusing on it. But anyway, I was having this conversation with my friend, and I could tell that she wanted to have a whole kind of rant about the cost of living and, oh my God, everything's so expensive and, oh, it's so hard. And I just, you know, I kind of humoured her a little bit, but I didn't want to go there. And those are the kinds of conversations that we have to sort of bring ourselves out of. And like you said, we don't care. Of course I care that my freaking mortgage has gone up £200, but what am I going to do about it? And, you know, of course I care that the cost of living has gone up. But the funny thing is that you realise that when you're not focusing on it, it simply doesn't affect you as much, because you're just not. And that's not to say that it's not affecting you or I, because of course it is. You know, we live in the UK, and of course it's affecting us. But it's just about how much focus you choose to place on it. And, you know, going back to what you were saying about the news, and when I was talking about I've become less tolerant of other people's bullshit, I wasn't talking about the news. What I meant was those kinds of conversations with people in your life that you just don't really want to be having, and having that ability to not engage, or only engage up to a point. I sometimes find myself, I'll engage up to a point, and then I'll be like, okay, I'm gonna, you know, break this down now, or kind of shut this down, which sounds awful, but it makes so much difference.
It's accepting what is, you know. Sometimes, okay, we've got to pay the mortgage, you've got to pay your rent, and okay, you might be worrying about when the next money is going to come in, but actually, if we can get to a place where we just accept this is what we have to do, and we will find a way to do it, it's gonna, you know, because we have to.
Yeah.
But actually, it's not allowing yourself to just to think the thoughts over and over again, because that soon then becomes a belief, that soon becomes a personality trait. We're stuck in it. It's much more important that we stay aligned, because if we can stay aligned to who we are, our sort of inner being, then we're more likely to actually attract the positive things to us. So we are going to probably make more money, and it is all probably going to work out better, and we're going to feel so much good in the process.
Completely. It's almost like you have to, because we do get to do this, you get to choose which version of the world that you want to be living in and that you want to be engaging in. It really is, because there are many people out there who are, you know, sort of, I suppose, in the more kind of spiritual world, who are tuned into the wonderful side of life, the fact that life is beautiful, the fact that, you know, the world is abundant and there's lots of amazing things going on. So you have to choose which version of the world that you want to be a part of. And as you and I have said many times before on the live, that you know, it's so much about what you're what conversations you're having and what you're consuming, basically.
Yeah. And but also, you know, as we started off by saying, you know, how you've been brought up and the beliefs that the people around you have, you know, how that's formed your own beliefs. So it can be a real process of taking off those layers and unlayering again, to really kind of get back to who you are, and noticing that some of your thought patterns are just simply because of the beliefs that perhaps your parents had, you know, that those beliefs of lack, those beliefs of there isn't enough, and actually tuning into the fact that there are many people out there who have come from nothing, who actually have found abundance, and that is available to all of us. So it's anyway, at least I've just seen it's 31 minutes past. So yeah, we did do a good job saying, I'm not sure we got much to say about on this subject. We've done quite well.
Well, it's been lovely to see you as usual, and we'll be back. Oh no, hang on, we won't be back next week because you're away.
I'm on holiday next week, so we're not going to be back next week, but we'll be back the week after.
And also, thing I will say to anyone who's watching is that you and I just came up with this idea to start putting these lives out on both of our podcasts. So in Polly's case, that's the Positive Perimenopause podcast. In my case, that's Spinsterhood Reimagined. So now we're putting these lives out as Thursday Thoughts every Thursday on both of our podcast platforms. So you can listen there too.
Yeah. Brilliant.
Thank
you, Lucy. Really lovely to see you.
Lots of love.
Take care.
See you later.
Bye.